In the market, sticking to your own views and weathering the cycles isn't easy, but when you truly do so, the rewards are obvious. Even the so-called darkest moments are much shorter than people imagine. Market data shows that by the end of the year, consumer investment has already started to recover to some extent, and that's when the returns will come. Moreover, investors who stay in the consumer sector and refuse to leave the table deserve higher returns than speculators. Otherwise, there would be no point in sticking it out. A recent piece of news might just blow a lot of people's minds. Red Bull's biggest competitor in China, Eastroc Beverage, has once again hit record highs in both revenue and profit, and Song Xiangqian along with his Zhihua Capital have earned a massive return of over 8.5 billion yuan from this investment. This is also the highest investment return ever disclosed in the Chinese consumer goods sector. If it weren't for the disclosure of this return, over the past few years, Song Xiangqian would have seemed more like a preacher in the media, constantly sharing his insights on consumer investment to spark the market's attention and enthusiasm for the industry. In the field of consumer investment, differences in understanding and information can both create tremendous value. Therefore, many firms not only keep information to themselves, but also tend to be evasive about their true investment insights. Even if they do share, what they say often doesn't match what they actually do. But this substantial and exceptional return proves that a true evangelist can also be a winner in the market, and this is the best reward for investment institutions that can truly align their knowledge with their actions. In many of Jiahua's investments, they have been the sole investor, such as with Yuan and Xiangji, but the company they've supported the longest is Dongpang Beverage. Dongpang Beverage operates in the functional drinks market, which is a classic example of a segmented market dominated by industry leaders. In such a market, the level of concentration is very high, making it easy for a duopoly to form. Even being the third largest player can mean you might not survive. It's all or nothing. That's why, in this fiercely competitive market, players need more than just money. Many challenges go beyond financial issues, such as understanding the industry. In 2012, Song Xiangqian met Suzuki Haru, the founder of Dongpang Beverage. 5 years later, Jiahua Capital became a shareholder in the company through a strategic investment worth hundreds of millions of yuan. This is a classic story where investors have to date the brand before they marry it. Through their early interactions, Song Xiangqian discovered the key to winning over Suzuki Haru, providing real, tangible support for their development. That's right, once a brand reaches a certain level of influence and scale, the money will come knocking on its own. But there aren't many friends who can truly help a brand break through its own limitations. According to Forbes, in 2017, when Dongpang Beverage and Red Bull were in the midst of their fiercest competition, founder Suzuki Haru took Song Xiangqian's advice and abandoned the simple price-cutting strategy, instead increasing the product's packaging volume to more milliliters. This move helped Dongpang quickly establish a market advantage and achieve a sales growth rate of over 35% in the following years. When it came to the user base, Song Xiangqian supported Dongpang Beverage's move to expand to a broader group of consumers. In 2023, Dongpang Beverage's sales volume accounted for more than Red Bull's in China's energy drink market, reaching 43%. This also set the stage for Jiahua Capital to receive a huge return of hundreds of millions of yuan. In fact, for many consumer chain companies, once the founding team has grown the brand to a certain scale through their own abilities, what they need most are elements that can drive a qualitative leap, such as talent and digitalization. At this point, the resources and insights of capital partners become especially important. To some extent, investment institutions are not only catchers, but also industry researchers and think tanks for companies. Jiahua Capital needs to be able to combine macro trends, understand the commonalities of successful consumer brands both in China and abroad, and help portfolio companies turn these insights into their own capabilities. For example, what exactly does Song Xiangqian mean when he often talks about mass consumption? Is it simply what ordinary people refer to as good quality and low price? In fact, the concept of the era of mass consumption comes from Jiahua Capital's research and has a rich connotation. It's far from being as simple as the literal meaning. For example, when it comes to Uniqlo, Song Xiangqian believes that Uniqlo has become a brand in Japan that transcends social classes, truly achieving the status of a national brand shared by everyone. Rather than saying that only wealthy people in Japan wear Uniqlo, it's more accurate to say that in Japan, even wealthy people choose to wear Uniqlo. This actually moves beyond the binary debate in domestic media about whether consumption is upgrading or downgrading, and instead looks at it from the perspective of high frequency, essential needs to identify brands that most people are willing to buy. Unlike the well-known fourth consumption era classification by Japanese scholar Akira Miura, Jiahua Capital correlates Japan's three major periods of economic development with cycles of changes in consumer spending, dividing post-war Japanese consumer society into three main stages. The first stage is the era of household consumption, the second stage is the era of personalized consumption, and the third stage is the post-mass consumption era. The second stage is essentially the era of mass consumption. The formation of this era was jointly influenced by three factors: economic cycles, industrial structure, and demographic structure. Looking at the changes in Japan's consumption eras, Jiahua Capital observed that in the final phase of rapid economic development, household consumption spending surged dramatically, marking the beginning of the mass consumption era. During the period when economic growth began to slow down, all types of consumer demand developed rapidly, with spending on spiritual and service-oriented needs growing even faster, reaching a peak around that time. After that, the total amount of consumption declined slowly until it stabilized. Using this as a framework, Jiahua Capital can also identify the common traits of those great brands. Whether it's Uniqlo from Japan or Coca-Cola, there are certain underlying principles that they share. In China, a bottle of Coca-Cola is cheap. You could buy 10 bottles of Coke for the price of one Starbucks coffee. But no one would ever call Coca-Cola a low-end brand, right? For Americans, both Coca-Cola and Starbucks are the common denominators in their consumption. From national leaders to ordinary workers, everyone can enjoy them. The key question is, which Chinese brands have this kind of potential, and what kind of support do they need? So, Jiahua's methodology has actually bridged the gap from the macro to the micro level. On the macro level, it's about understanding consumer behavior within the context of economic policy, aiming to meet 80% of the needs of 80% of the population. From an industry perspective, it's about grasping the fundamental laws of industry development. Take the restaurant industry, for example. Whether a business is directly operated or franchised isn't the core issue. Both models can produce outstanding companies. The real core issue is control over the supply chain. On the micro level, it's all about patience. Once you've made your choice, you stick with the company and support them long-term. Study macroeconomic trends, pay close attention to the laws of industry development, focus on a company's management capabilities, put your heart into it, and then you can trust the rest of the time. When Jiahua Capital possesses such a complete and powerful investment system that unites knowledge and action in the consumer sector, no matter how external cycles change, Jiahua can operate methodically within its own smaller cycle, reaping one fruitful result after another. In 2024, the TV drama Blossoms became extremely popular, and Song Xiangqian was also a big fan of the show. He believes that Blossoms is filled with the vibrant atmosphere of a prosperous era, with the air brimming with the scent of freedom and money. The show uses a single drama to tell the story of an entire city, and every character in it has received the gifts of their era. There's also a preacher in Blossoms, that is, the uncle behind Baozong. Without Uncle's wisdom, Baozong wouldn't have been able to get out of danger time and again. And in the consumer investment market, Song Xiangqian, who sticks to investing while never forgetting to spread his philosophy, might one day see the principles he's tirelessly advocated over the years become widely accepted common sense in the market. For Song Xiangqian, being steadfast in consumer investment may well be the most successful choice of his life. What the ancients called establishing achievements, virtue, and words, he has accomplished all three in the field of consumer investment. Perhaps many years from now, when people rewrite the history of consumer investment in China, they'll be willing to call him the godfather of consumer investment.